If you've ever repotted a houseplant, chances are you've heard this piece of advice before. Maybe from a well-meaning friend, a family member who's had plants for decades, a YouTube tutorial, or even the person at your local garden center. Make sure to put a layer of gravel or rocks at the bottom of the pot, they say. It's for drainage. It stops the roots from sitting in water. And it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? I mean, think about it. Outside in nature, water flows right through gravel. It doesn't pool on top of it. So if you put a layer of rocks at the bottom of a pot, surely the water will just pass right through, keep the roots dry, and exit happily out the drainage hole. Problem solved. Root rot avoided. Plant thrives. It's simple. It's logical. It's been passed down for generations. But here's the thing about gardening advice that gets passed down for generations. Sometimes it's wrong. And in this case, it's not just a little wrong. It's completely backwards. I'm here to tell you today that putting rocks in the bottom of your pot for drainage is one of the biggest myths in indoor gardening. And honestly, it might be why some of your plants have been struggling, looking sad, growing slowly, or even dying, despite you doing everything you thought was right. Welcome to Urban Plant Fix, and on this channel, we don't just look at pretty plants and show you beautiful jungle setups. Don't get me wrong, those are great. But here, we do something different. We fix problems. We look at the hidden mistakes, the bad advice, the things everyone assumes are true but actually aren't. And we break down the science so you can actually grow healthier plants. The myth and the reality. Let's be clear from the start. The myth says, add a layer of gravel, pot shards, or rocks to the bottom of a pot to improve drainage and stop root rot. It sounds so convincing, doesn't it? You see that big drainage hole at the bottom, and you worry your soil will just wash right out. So you add a layer of rocks to keep the soil in place while letting the water pass through. Or maybe you've heard that this creates an air gap that helps roots breathe. Some people even believe it mimics the natural layers of soil in the wild. But here's the truth. The reality, backed by horticultural science, is this: it actually creates a hidden swimming pool for your roots. And that swimming pool leads to rot, suffocation, and a slow death for your plant. Think about that for a moment. The very thing you added to protect your plant is slowly killing it. And the worst part? You would never know. The plant doesn't die overnight. It declines gradually. The leaves yellow one by one. Growth slows. It becomes more susceptible to pests. And when you finally pull it out of the pot, you find a mess of brown, mushy roots that never had a chance. So why does everyone believe this? Well, it's been passed down for generations. It appears in old gardening books from the 1950s. It gets repeated in YouTube tutorials with millions of views. Garden center employees recommend it with absolute confidence. Well-meaning friends share it as friendly advice. On the surface, it makes perfect sense. And that's the danger. It's intuitive. It's visual. You can almost see the water flowing through the rocks in your imagination. But plants don't grow in logic, they grow in science. And the science of how water actually moves through soil tells a very different story. The truth is, this myth has probably killed more houseplants than any single pest or disease. It's the silent killer of the plant world. And today, we're going to expose it. The science, the perched water table. To understand why this myth is so damaging, we first have to understand something that happens in every single pot you own, whether you realize it or not. It's called the perched water table, and once you understand it, you will never look at a potted plant the same way again. Let's start with the basics. To understand why this is bad, we need to look at how water moves in a pot. It's not just about gravity. There's another force at play called capillary action. Think of it like this. Water wants to stick to soil particles. It's the same reason a paper towel soaks up a spill. Those tiny fibers in the paper towel pull the water in and hold it. Soil does the exact same thing. The smaller the particles, the stronger the pull. When you have a pot with just soil, gravity eventually wins and the excess water drains out the bottom. Simple. But here's where it gets interesting. And this is the part most people never consider. When you water a plant, you're not just wetting the top layer. Water is moving through the entire pot, pulled down by gravity and pulled sideways and upward by capillary action at the same time. These two forces are constantly fighting each other. Gravity wants the water out. Capillary action wants to hold it in. Eventually, they reach a balance. The water that can drain out does. But a certain amount stays behind, held in the bottom layer of soil by capillary force. That layer of saturated soil at the bottom? That's the perched water table. It's there in every pot. Always. Now, here's what happens when you add rocks. But when you add a layer of rocks, you create what scientists call a textural boundary. The water is happily moving through the soil, but when it hits the rocks, it stops. Because the water prefers to stick to the fine soil particles rather than fall into the air gaps between the rocks. Think about that for a second. The water doesn't see the rocks as a pathway. It sees them as a wall. Those air gaps between the rocks actually break the capillary chain. The water can't pull itself down into the rocks because the particles are too big and too far apart. So it just hovers. So, the water accumulates right above the rocks. It saturates that bottom layer of soil and just sits there. This is called a perched water table. It's water perched above the rocks, unable to drain. And here's the cruel irony. You added those rocks to create more space for air and drainage. But what you actually did was shrink the usable soil space and push that wet zone higher up, closer to the main root mass. Imagine placing a dry sponge on top of gravel. Pour water on it. The sponge soaks it all up. It only drips into the gravel when it is completely full. That means the bottom of that sponge is constantly wet. Your potting soil acts exactly like that sponge. And when roots grow down into that constantly wet zone, they suffocate. They rot. This is not a slow process in some cases. In a deep pot with a thick rock layer, that perched water table can sit there for days, even weeks, depending on your climate and the plant's water uptake. The roots that reach down there don't stand a chance. So, by adding rocks to improve drainage, you've actually created the perfect conditions for root rot. The very thing you were trying to avoid. And this is why so many plant parents get frustrated. They do everything right. They water carefully. They provide good light. They fertilize on schedule. But their plants still decline. And they never think to blame the rocks, because the rocks were supposed to be helping. The right way to do it. Okay, so if rocks are bad, what should you do instead? The answer is simpler than you think. Number 1. Focus on the potting mix. Drainage doesn't happen at the bottom of the pot. It happens throughout the entire pot. You need a light, fluffy, well-aerated soil. Look for a mix that contains perlite. Those little white rocks? They're not just filler. They create air pockets so water can flow through freely. You can also use pumice. For an extra draining mix, like for succulents, try 2 parts potting soil to 1 part perlite. Number 2. Use a pot with a drainage hole. This is non-negotiable. If your pot doesn't have a hole, you can drill one. Or use it as a decorative outer pot and keep your plant in a plastic nursery pot inside. Just make sure to empty any excess water after watering. Number 3. Stop soil from washing out. Instead of rocks, use something permeable. A piece of window screen mesh works great. A coffee filter works too. It holds the soil, but lets water pass. And it won't create that deadly perched water table. Good ways to use rocks. Now, does this mean rocks have no place in plant care? Not at all. You just have to use them the right way. Good use number 1. Top dressing. A thin layer of decorative gravel on top of the soil? That's great. It prevents fungus gnats from laying eggs. It stops soil from splashing out when you water. And it looks beautiful. Good use number 2. Humidity trays. Tropical plants love humidity. Fill a shallow tray with pebbles, add water just below the top of the pebbles, and set your plant on top. As the water evaporates, it creates humidity around the plant. Just make sure the pot isn't sitting in the water. Good use number 3. Weight. If you have a tall, top-heavy plant in a lightweight pot, a few heavy rocks at the very bottom can add stability. But, and this is important, you need to separate the rocks from the soil with a permeable barrier like landscape fabric to avoid that perched water table. So, let's recap. For years, we've been told to add rocks for drainage. But science shows us it's a myth. Rocks at the bottom trap water, suffocate roots, and cause rot. Real drainage comes from 3 things. A pot with a hole, a high-quality, perlite-rich potting mix, and smart watering habits. Save your rocks for top dressing or humidity trays. But when it comes to the bottom of the pot, leave them out. If this video helped you fix a plant problem, hit that subscribe button. We've got more myth-busting videos coming soon. Thanks for watching. Happy planting! And remember, at Urban Plant Fix, we fix your plant problems, one leaf at a time.